Duke's a very important album. I think if Duke hadn't happened, we wouldn't have carried on, I think, in my mind, because I think we sort of refound ourselves a little bit. I suppose by then we'd done some solo albums, if I remember rightly. So you were less pushy about stuff you'd written. Phil was living alone in his house, actually, in Guildford, and we wrote it there.
By this point, chronologically, I'd left the band, gone to Vancouver after In the Never Three to save my marriage. They went off and did their solo records while I sorted myself out. I came back. They were in the middle of their solo albums, so they kind of had to finish them. I didn't have anything to do, so I did what was to become Face Value. That was my first solo record. And then when all that was finished, we got together and we moved all the gear into my house.
I think we came in there with the intention of trying to sort of, a little bit barren of ideas, so we sat down and did a lot more improvising. And some of the ideas I had that I hadn't really developed, I had this riff, which was the opening part of Behind the Lines, which was doing which was just a sort of, almost just a rotating sort of riff, four different, in 4 keys. And I hadn't really developed it, so we sat down and started playing it, and then immediately sort of started developing, little ideas came and things, and then in fact the whole song which came from it was actually just a development of that first part, but it wasn't something written beforehand at all. So it very much emerged in the studio from that one idea, and that's how a lot of the things happened on this a bit.
I think by this point I had done all my demos for Face Value, and Face Value was it wasn't finished, it wasn't even probably recorded in its finished stage, but I'd been through the process of a writer. I mean, I'd written all the Face Value stuff by the time we wrote Duke. So I'd changed. I'd become a songwriter. I mean, I'd become more of a singer because I was singing songs, that I'd written, and emoting, if you like, and being, kind of putting things out there.
Phil's writing stuff on his own helped change the balance too, I think, actually, because he's always had a very good feel for writing songs that work, in sort of 4 minutes, which was never our forte, and that I think helped balance the album too.
As a writer, he was contributing more to the band now than he had done in the past. I'd still say that this album is still more dominated by what Mike and I wrote, but Phil was coming up much more to be a kind of equal kind of writer, which I think was as a strength, I think, because we had the variety which each of us gave, he had a directness. If Phil's I'm the least direct, and Mike's Phil's the most direct, and then Mike's somewhere in the middle, and the combination could work quite well. We'd pull each other in different directions. I'd make him expand a bit, and then he'd make me contract, which was not a bad thing to do. Otherwise, every song would be 25 minutes long.
By this point, we'd really, I think, had decided that what we did best, or what we preferred doing, now we were our solo outlets, was actually doing things we couldn't do anywhere else, which was write together. So we kind of did bring a couple of songs each to the project, which was less than ever before, and that was to become even less on the next record. But Tony brought a couple of songs in, Mike brought a couple of songs in, I brought a couple of songs in. Tony insists that I never played him in the air tonight. I did. He claims that I didn't. But I did, because I was very proud of it. But he says that if we'd have heard it, he would have wanted to do it with Genesis. But anyway, I think along the way here, we were starting to get a bit harder and edgier about certainly harder and edgier than Never Three.
I held the book so tightly in my hands. I saw your picture, heard you call my name.
Nearly everything on Duke really actually has a live. It actually sounds almost the way we wrote it, because we recorded it live for us. We went, once we'd written the songs, we went to Polar Studios. Duke's Travels, Duke's End, all that stuff. I mean, it's very, very strong. Behind the Lines, a lot of energy, and the live drum sound, the live feeling of everything in the band. I mean, that was, to me, the first time we'd started to sound good on record.
You let me down.
We have a habit of doing what we do, but I do think that there's a bit of concept to try and get back to writing together. I think the solo stuff made it possible. When you're doing albums and you had three guys bringing in lots of songs, it was hard to actually find enough room. But with the solo albums being done, you had less stuff to bring in. You didn't say, here are my 10 songs, you know.
The Misunderstanding was a song that I'd written kind of based on a kind of a rhythm. It was a little bit between Hold the Line and Toto and Sail on Sailor by the Beach Boys. You know, I love that kind of, when that Rocky Mountain Way by Joe Walsh, that kind of rock thing, when it's just in the right place, you know. And so that's how I'd written it. I don't say it ended up being as good as that, but that was and I was going to have it on face value, and then I played this stuff to the guys, and Tony and Mike really liked that because of the same reasons. They liked the Beach Boys kind of that rock thing. That was a rock thing, but it's like ding, 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 ding. So they took that song and we recorded it, and I guess because it had single written all over it in America, it was the first single.
There must be some misunderstanding. Must be some kind of mistake.
At one point, I think we thought that we could revisit the idea of doing a long side, maybe split, you know, like having bands, because we're still talking about vinyl at this point, like Supper's Ready, you know, something that was like a body of work. And I think we kind of, I mean, that's why there's Duke's Travels, Duke's End, because that's kind of, we still like those titles, and we kind of, that's all that's left of that idea, really.
Yes, that it would have gone Behind the Lines, Duchess, Guide Vocal, Turn It On Again, Duke's Travels, Duke's End, which is actually how we performed it when we were live. We tried it. The reason we didn't do it, one reason we didn't do it is we didn't want the comparisons with Supper's Ready, and felt maybe it wasn't the moment to do a sort of a totally combined thing like that. As it is, there is quite a lot of linkage between those tracks anyhow. The first three are linked. And at the time when we were talking about this, the bit that became Turn It On Again was just a link. It was just, we went once around the whole sequence, you know, just the two bits, and then went on into Duke's Travels, you know, well. And we did it, and we recorded all this stuff, and I thought that's much too strong to just do once, so we did it twice.
All I need is a TV show there and the radio.
Turn It On Again was a song that had this guitar riff that I was playing much slower, actually. You know, and Phil said, just try it, pick it up a lot and try it like this. I was going do 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 at one point with a sort of Queen harmony guitars. I don't know why I got to that point. I was just messing around with it.
My bit was slow too, in fact. We were playing the whole it was more like that. And then Phil sort of, he said, I don't know, he was, you know, he was kind of in a certain kind of mood in those days, and the drums are what make it. I mean, absolutely, the drums are what make it, which is a sort of key thing. That's why it's so much a group song, even though musically it came from the two of us. But it's and it just gave it an energy and something that we hadn't seen in it at all originally.
It's got a good drum part that makes it sound simple rather than making it sound as complicated as it is. So that's one of the reasons why it could be a single. I think if you told the record company it was in 13/8, they'd have said, I couldn't be a single.
We will fly away. I can show you some of the people in my life.
The catchy part, as you came at the end, you know, turn it on, turn it on, turn it on. It then became a stage classic, you know, and then, much to the annoyance, I think, of most Genesis fans, we did a Blues Brothers parody at the end of it, which they'll be pleased to know that we've ditched for this last tour.
This album, I have to be honest, this is my favourite Genesis album, really. It has such a sort of positive quality about it. I love the way it starts. When I say I love Duchess, it works fantastically. And I love all the instrumental stuff towards the end too. I think, although it starts a little weak, but it just gets really good. And there's a strong emotional moment when it gets to the repeat of guide vocal done within Duke's Travels, which is a very intense piece of sort of singing and everything. And I think that's to me is one of the strongest. This is one of those very strong moments in Genesis music.